So we've kept the best for the end. The international, where our team is going to present. We have shortened the because we had 1 hour. Unfortunately, we know you're tired and some of you want to go home. So, and we also will have probably Guido Razzi joining us. He's come back from home and is going to join us for the closing remarks. But in the meantime, Riccardo and Martin are going to present a little bit what we do for international. Apart from these very nice 2 days, we have other activities.
Okay, thank you. And of course, this is the last presentation of after a very long meeting and after a very long meeting, and it's Friday afternoon, so this puts Martin and me in a bad position. However, I think we'll try to tell you something interesting. With this presentation, so far we have looked inwards towards the European Union, and now we will look outside, how we cooperate with our international partners, with other regulators, and also we will try to explain how we regulators try to think out of the box and find new ways to overcome the obstacles to cooperation. Obstacles are confidentiality issues, political issues, lack of trust, and all these things. And of course, we need to overcome all this in order to cooperate. So, why we cooperate? The slide, I hope, gives you the impression of how complex is the world out there. Globalization has brought very complex supply chains, both manufacturing supply chains and after the product is put on the market. There are complex products, biotechnology, gene therapy, cell therapy, etc., etc. We've heard a lot about it before. Complex formulations, micellar systems, nanotechnologies. For all this reason, for all this complexity, we need to cooperate. Cooperation is essential. And cooperation, the main aim of cooperation between regulators is basically avoid duplication of work, and not because we want to do less, but because we need to redeploy the limited resources on more critical areas. And this should help also to speed patients' access to new and affordable products. And another aspect is that we've seen about innovation, all the new technologies, big data, artificial intelligence, and all the rest. So some regulators may lack resources or specific competencies to address all these issues. So basically, we need to cooperate. And this is not only true for developing countries, actually. It's true also for the Europe, the US, and everyone. So, as it's Friday afternoon, I won't stay much on this slide. I just want to say that we have a EU Medicines Agency's network strategy to 2020. So it went from 2015 to 2020. It's a little bit old now, and soon we will have a new one. But on this one, there were 4 pillars, and contributing to the global regulatory environment is on the same level of human health. So basically, we take it very seriously. International cooperation at EMA, also here, just a few words. We spoke about how we discuss products with international partners, and you can see on the third line that we have calculated that about 80% of the products that go through the EMA committees has been discussed one way or another with international partners. So most of the products are discussed. Of course, we're in international affairs, so it's a small team, as you can see. This is a cross-agency activity. Basically, we coordinate the rest of the rest of the agency as regards international cooperation. And the clusters are very important. We'll speak about it in another slides very soon. The first line, it says that activities with FDA, US FDA, it means PMDA, which is from the regulatory agency from Japan, Health Canada, the Australian TGA, Swiss Medic, and WHO are part of our daily work. These are our in a way, our main partners because we have confidentiality arrangements with them, so we can exchange confidential information with them. However, new countries and regions emerging as important players, and in particular, we can identify China, India, Brazil, Africa, Mexico, and Russia. And with these countries, the interactions, the number of interactions is rapidly growing. So this is some metrics that basically confirm what I've just said. Mostly, we still speak with our confidentiality arrangement partners, but a big slice is also with other countries, mainly the ones that I have listed before. The total number of interactions you can see in 2017, this is only for international affairs at EMA, is quite a big number. So, yeah, just consider it. Here, if you're curious of what type of interactions we have, it's in this slide, but again, for you will have the slide, and for the sake of keeping the time, I will go very quickly through it. Actually, we'll jump it. Now, this is a slide that I like, and I change every time a little bit to make it better. But there are two trends that we can identify on how international regulatory cooperation evolves. One is at the beginning, we had mostly bilateral cooperation. Now, bilateral cooperation is still very important, but because of these new global players, basically, multilateral cooperation is becoming more and more important. And also, we're going from harmonization to convergence to reliance. Harmonization means the same rules and procedures and guidelines. Who is familiar with ICH understands what I'm talking about. The same guidelines are approved and used in different parts of the world. Convergence means it's like with the mutual recognition agreements. We have different systems, but they have equivalent results. So even if guidelines, etc., are not harmonized, the results are the same. Reliance, we'll see what it is, and Martin will speak about it in a minute, but this is becoming more and more important, and it's a new way to cooperate, and it's something that at EMA we support. So from bilateral to multilateral cooperation. Starting with bilateral cooperation, we have two main ways to cooperate bilaterally with other regulators. One are formalized bilateral agreements. It's mainly our confidentiality arrangements and mutual recognition agreements. With confidentiality arrangements, as I said, we can exchange confidential information without asking the owner of this information, the companies. And with mutual recognition agreements, we recognize the results of inspections carried out by the mutual recognition agreement partner. Now, these are very, very, very good. We have heard before about the new mutual recognition agreement with the US, so it's something to aim for. However, we have to say that these very formalized bilateral agreements are difficult. They need years. Who has been involved with the mutual recognition with the US knows that it started decades ago, really. And also in certain cases, like the mutual recognition agreement, it needs assessment of each other partner regulatory system. Also, we have another kind of cooperation which we call, together with the European Commission, we call this ad hoc bilateral cooperation mechanisms. We have mainly with China, India, and Russia. This is very, very good, but they're in an embryonic state. They're just started, so they need to be somehow developed. So this reliance in some way will address these issues, and we will see it. Now, confidentiality agreement, just to let you know, in this map, you see with whom we have it. It's Canada, US, Australia, Switzerland, WHO, and Japan. And then mutual recognition agreements. The map is quite similar. As you can see, the WHO disappears. We don't have a mutual recognition agreement with WHO, and New Zealand and Israel, it's a bit small, but it's there, and they appear on the map. So these are the main partners currently with whom we speak, and we cooperate in a bilateral way. Now, one word about the clusters. We've seen that we discuss products with international partners. Many of our products, which goes through the EMEA, are discussed somehow with international partners, and mostly this happens through the clusters. The clusters are enabled by confidentiality arrangements. We can't have a cluster unless we have a confidentiality arrangement. And this is because mostly at these periodic meetings between regulators from different regulatory authorities, we discuss products. So something that it's to be considered, of course, confidential. On the right hand of the slide, you have a list of the current clusters. So you can see that we have many, and this is a lot of work for the EMA, really a lot. And I have to say, I haven't been directly involved, but there has been a revision of this cluster, and a lot of work is going on, and to make this kind of cooperation even better. Now, the clusters are a good example, I think, of how cooperation goes from bilateral to multilateral. They have been created traditionally. They were bilateral exchange of ideas between regulators in the European Union and regulators at the US FDA. Now, other confidentiality arrangement partners, Japan, Australia, Health Canada, and Swissmedic also participate to this cluster. So it's a more global conversation. Just to give you an example of examples of EMA multilateral engagement, we participate actively to all these and others actually groups. The WHO, the World Health Organization, is maybe the most important. ICH, which is for who doesn't know, the International Council of Harmonization, previously the International Conference for Harmonization. It's another example of how three regions, not bilateral, it was trilateral, but three regions of the world, Japan, Europe, and US, used to cooperate, used to try to harmonize their guidelines mainly, and now a lot of other regulators are there, including China, who is a member, and India, which is an observer. For the sake of time, I will go ahead. Maybe the bottom left part of the slide is also interesting. We are trying really to cooperate a lot with Africa, and Martin is actually leading. And we hope that our system, our European system, can inspire the African countries to have something similar. We heard before during the meeting of the African agency that could take inspiration from what we do here in Europe. With this, I finish my part, and I will give the floor to Martin.
So I'm the lucky one who gets the final presentation, the final set of slides. So let's try and keep this high energy as we go on through. So as Riccardo just mentioned, we have seen this movement from harmonization, convergence through to reliance. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the reliance initiatives that we have in place here at the agency. As Riccardo just mentioned, no agency can do it all, no matter how big we are, and the need for reliance has become ever more important. The WHO has responded to this need by putting together a package of guidance documents on good reliance practices. So GRP, yes, another set of acronyms to add to your list to go home with. GRP, good reliance practice. The consultation document is still in the process of finalization by the WHO, but I think there are 2 points that are really important from the documents. One is, what is reliance? So it is the idea of taking into account, either in whole or part, the work, the assessment done by others. And the other part of it is you keep the responsibility for your own decision. So it is not taking over, they decided, so we decide. It is, this is what they assessed. Let's use that assessment and take our decision based on that. So reliance should not be seen as giving away your sovereignty and your responsibility. You still take your responsibility for the decision, but leveraging the work done by others. I think that's really important. That's the gist of what we're trying to talk about in terms of what is reliance. So a couple of examples to inspire you on a Friday afternoon. The first one is our famous Article 58 procedure, recently renamed EU Medicines for All, EU M for All. And this example I want to talk about is the procedure allows the EMA to assess a product which is intended for use outside of the European Union and only outside the European Union. It is targeted, the assessment, for use in the countries. So the benefit risk is assessed not on the terms of the benefit risk of use within the European Union and the healthcare and systems of the European Union, but in terms of the benefit risk of where the patients, the intended patients, will be treated. It's a different set of considerations to take into account. And during that process, we involve the regulators from those target countries in our assessment. And we also involve the WHO as part of the assessment. It's really important to note that. It's exactly the same standards, exactly the same procedures, exactly the same experts as we would use for medicine that would be approved for the European patients. The only difference is, at the end, there is no marketing authorization for Europe. There is a scientific opinion for the use of that product in the intended target countries. And it's an incredible procedure, and the work the agency done on this has, I'll tell you in a moment, has actually had quite a significant public health impact globally. And just that last bullet point is worth bearing in mind, that the licensing decision is taken by the non-EU regulators. So we're not licensing for use in which other country. It is the regulator in that country taking the responsibility for that licensing decision, but leveraging the work that we've done in which they have also been involved and had input. So the sorts of medicines that use the Article 58 procedure, it can be any medicine, innovative or generic, but the main products who have used the procedure so far, have been vaccines or medicines for priority public health diseases. So there have been vaccines as part of the WHO expanded program, and the focus of most of them have been on HIV/AIDS, malaria, and TB. But we've also seen products for maternal and child health. This is really important because this also is part of our contribution to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Really important for maternal health, which is a key part of the WHO SDGs. So any product can come in through Article 58, as long as we EMA think it is eligible, and as long as the WHO agrees that it's eligible. So you're just about to see a slide that no one outside this building has ever seen before. And that is because it was only finalized yesterday. So together with my colleague Maria, we have been working with the companies who have had Article 58 opinions to try and track where have these products actually gone on to have license. So we've so far had responses from 5 of the companies. So this is based only on 5 of the products. And we've had approvals on 94 countries worldwide based on the Article 58 products. So using the WHO regions, 36 countries in Africa, 18 countries Latin South America, 10 countries in Southeast Asia, 16 countries in the wider Europe region, 5 in the Eastern Mediterranean, and 9 in the Western Pacific. And we know that there are another 3 applications just about to be made in Africa, And that's just for 5 products. So we are really, really enthusiastic about the global health potential of the partnership that we're able to offer for these Article 58 products. Just give a bit more detail for Africa, which is quite the most crowded part of that map. There you can see the swathe. The darker the color is, the more products that country has approved. So you can see there's a swathe ranging from the eastern seaboard right across, where many of the countries have experience of more than one product. And this is really, really exciting for us. And hopefully, once we get all the data, we'll be able to show that actually what we're doing has a significant public health impact. So we're very excited by that. Another example for reliance, so relying on the scientific outputs of the EMA, is the pilot we have with the World Health Organization on collaborative registration. This means that we start with a product that has been approved in the European Union on the basis of an EMA opinion. And then the World Health Organization works as an intermediary with more than one country, or even a whole region, be it for example, the East African Community or the SADC, the Southern African Development Community. And the product goes through a type of mutual recognition facilitated by the WHO. Now, in this pilot, we've had 5 products that have successfully gone through this mutual recognition, this collaborative registration. And we have a 6th just about to start this month. So the products that have gone through have been for AIDS, HIV, TB, and malaria. We're really excited about the 6th product because it'll be a biological product. So the others have been chemical substances. It's the first time we've been able to do this collaborative registration for biological. We're very excited to see how this will work and whether we can actually use this collaborative reliance to approve quite complicated products. So again, it's about how can we facilitate and leverage the European scientific output for the benefit of the global health. I'll skip this as example, knowing what the time is, but there are other examples, except to say the program we have for generics, the only thing to take away from this is the other examples, we share the assessments after they've been finished. This pilot allows us to share assessment reports in real time during the assessment. So there are 4 countries that participate in the pilot, and they get the assessments and the draft assessments as we go through the procedure. So it's not just afterwards, we can do it in real time as we go through. So the purpose of this slide is simply to try and give an idea of the reason why within the European Union, within the member states of the European Union, we have such a successful reliance process, because the European medicine system is based on reliance between the 28 member states, Iceland, Norway, and Liechtenstein. And the reason it works for us is because we have these common foundations, these common building blocks. And they are common legislation, common standards, common application forms. We had a question from a colleague here on the left-hand side yesterday about the CTD. We have a common CTD format. We have common guidelines, and we have a common inspection. So we have a common way of inspecting. We have common inspection reports. We have a common way of carrying out inspections. And that's why it works within the European system. So Riccardo just mentioned the point of, can other regional systems inspire themselves from the European network? Well, this is the answer why it works here. And these are the things to take away and perhaps think, does my regional network have these common foundation blocks? We often get questions about sharing assessment reports. So, starting on the left-hand side, the first block, the first obvious point if you want to see an EMA assessment report is to look on the website, our wonderful website, and all the European public assessment reports you've heard about for the past 2 days, they are all available on the website. That's the easy option. If, however, we need to share the full assessment report, so the unredacted version, well then, how do we do it? The first option is for the EMA to share directly with the national regulatory authority. And we can do this with or without the consent of the company. Riccardo mentioned confidentiality arrangements. We can share an awful lot of information with confidentiality arrangement partners, with or without the consent of the company. But so we can share directly on request from a regulatory authority, please share this information, and we will do it. If the company refuses, disagrees, then we will have to redact some of the information. But if they do refuse and disagree, you may want to ask yourself, why? I'll leave you with that thought. And then the third option for sharing public assessment reports is for the company to share. And some companies say, we can't share this with you, it belongs to the MA. We will always give permission for the company to share the assessment reports or inspection reports with you. And if the company needs some sort of written document, there is a letter on our website. You click on it, you can fill it out, and we will give our consent quite easily. If the company is sharing with you, they take responsibility for the protection of personal data, because we need to be very aware of that. They also take responsibility for redacting any commercial confidential information that they deem needs to be protected. So I just leave that slide with you because we get an awful lot of questions about that. Training capacity, you heard about this yesterday. So training and how important training is for the European system. We know how it is important for the European system to have training so all of our experts and assessors across the 31 countries have the same standards. And we offer the opportunity to regulators outside of the EU to also benefit from this. So we do regularly invite to workshops and conferences and training where we can. There are issues sometimes of whether or not the training is using a live dossier which contains confidential information, and that restricts sometimes what we can share. But we know it's really important, so that's why we share with colleagues. The last slide, I'm going to give the honor to this to Riccardo, because it is Riccardo who's put in so much work into making the international awareness session happen. So I give to him the honor of the final slide.
Oh, I'm emotional now. Okay, I'm all red now. Okay. So in conclusions, the take-home messages from this presentation, it is no longer about whether regulators will cooperate with each other. It is about how best to do it. International cooperation is part of EMA's and other EU national competent authorities' daily work. It's imperative to strive for convergence. Otherwise, it's very difficult to cooperate, of course, if there are completely different systems. And finally, maybe the most important is that reliance can be a simple, useful, and flexible tool for better cooperation. Maybe, if I may, just 30 seconds. Reliance is really a flexible tool. Can be unilateral, for example. I mean, someone uses an assessment report done by someone else, or can be bilateral, like a mutual recognition agreement. Can be. So it's a very flexible tool. As we said before, the responsibility is still with the end user. We just, other regulators just put their work, they make their work available for the others, but the end user retains its responsibilities. With this, I think we have finished. I see. Well, unless there are questions, actually. But thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, questions, please. Yes.
Just a quick one from my own understanding. Who initiates the Article 58 scientific opinion? Is it the market authorization applicant or the national authority in the target country?
Okay. So the Article 58 procedure is initiated by the sponsor. I use the word deliberately sponsor rather than pharmaceutical company, because we're seeing increasingly that NGOs, non-governmental organizations, are coming forward with products. So particularly in the global health field, we see a lot of consortia and NGOs getting involved. So it can be pharma companies or it can be NGOs, but they are the ones who initiate. The one thing I didn't say is that it's not just the procedure. We want them to come in early. So the same scientific advice that we offer for companies for the centralized procedure, we do for Article 58, which means the key there is we can involve the target regulators in the design of the clinical trials. So that if you are looking for approval in West Africa, we can involve regulators from West Africa in the clinical trials so that they know and understand the product. They follow the product all the way through. So when it comes to the actual final opinion and then their own approval, they know the dossier as well as we do. And so that's the beauty of it. So what I like to say about scientific advice is come early, come often.
More questions? Oh, yes, please.
My question is for Martin. There was a slide you had on reliance of NRAs. I don't know what it said. Yeah, the one where we can share assessment reports or get assessment reports from the EMA. So yes. So the option for the company to share their report, is it that after an assessment, the EMA gives companies their assessment reports? Because in our setting, you only get questions and then the certificate, but not the actual assessment report. So would they have this on them? Or do we still need to come through the EMA?
If I've understood the question correctly, the companies get their assessment reports all the way through the procedure. And I'm not sure it's usual for them to share interim assessment reports, but they do receive them. We don't just keep it for ourselves. We share the assessment reports with the company all the way through the process. And so once the final assessment report is there, they are then free to use that, provided they comply with protection of personal data, which is incredibly important. I think Agnes wants to add something there.
I think what maybe was not so clear that we send, because we haven't shown this aspect in the various presentation. When we assess at certain milestone, we share the outcome of this assessment to the company. They are not influencing what we do. They are not commenting. They are not trying to change it, but they are informed of what is happening. So they see the assessment report at day 120, and they receive the list of questions, so they can also understand where the questions are coming from. They receive the joint assessment report at day 150 after they have answered the question, and they receive the final assessment report, which is part of the opinion that is sent, and then the final decision. So they can share these documents straight on. That doesn't need to come through EMA. We like to be informed because it also shows us how these documents are used. But we are not necessarily involved because the company can. It's their document. Once it's in the opinion, so what it can happen is we do it because then regulatory authorities have the trust that this is the real version of the assessment report. But then we have to do the redaction.
Just to say, if you look at on our website to the pre-authorization guidance, there is a question and answer that can explain it. So, no, just to say, if you want more details, you can have a look there. Is in the pre-submission guidance. I can't remember the number now, but it's there. Mariana?
Oh, sorry. No. Oh. Sorry. Angelika Yangu, Cancer Research UK. I guess we come under those organisations, non-governmental organisations that you just mentioned. We are a UK-based organisation, of course, and we frequently collaborate with EU-based organisations. And I'm sorry to ask this on a Friday afternoon, but what advice would you give organisations such as these as the UK sets to leave the EU?
I'll answer the question perhaps diplomatic in a different way. All applicants for EMA procedures must be within the European Economic Area, whether it's a centralized procedure or Article 58. Is that and so whether that is a pharmaceutical company, an NGO, but also all applicants, and then all marketing authorization holders. So once you have the authorization holder or the scientific opinion, it must be within the European Economic Area. Is that a subtle enough answer?
We had a situation with orphan drug designation holder, which need to be based in the EU, and very small companies that told us we're not based in the EU, but we would like to go. And at that stage, we are not based in the EU. Maybe later on, but not now. So what you can do is link with a CRO, for example, and the CRO could be based on the established in the EU, could be your relay into the EU system, so acting on your behalf. But of course, it has a cost, which may be a hurdle for some small organization like or NGOs who do not have so much cash to give to a CRO. But that's the sort of possibility to circumvent the need for being established in the EU. I just wanted to show you, because some people have asked whether we could collaborate more with FDA. This little paper shows you what over the year, so you have every day of the year and every month of the year. And this is the number of activities we have with the FDA plus other regulatory authorities, just to show you that we don't have so much time left to do other things. So just to reassure you that we do collaborate a lot, and this is what we actually do. And each of these interactions takes 2 or 3 hours of teleconference, sometimes at funny hours, because it has to be established with all over the world. So very often our Japanese colleagues are working at 11 or midnight. Our Australian colleagues can be working at 7 a.m. And we are lucky because we are more in the middle, so it's right lunchtime. But sometimes we have teleconference at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. It's not so rare. So that is the price of collaboration, which is a nice price to pay.
Before the next question, if I'll make the same remark I've done before. There is a guidance, a Brexit guidance, I think it's called, on the web. So if you want to know more, you can always consult this one. And of course, it's subject to changes, but that's the situation at the moment. It's there. More questions? Yeah.
Still regarding the Article 58. So just to understand what, so when a company gets an opinion from the Article 58, then this facilitates them to get into the WHO pre-qualification list, right? There are some collaborative pilots with the WHO on this. And my question is, so it's actually not about this, but what is the added value of having the Article 58 rather than to be on the WHO pre-qualification list? Because so a company can also get a risk-benefit assessment for being on the WHO pre-qualification list. So what does the Article 58 brings in addition to be in this WHO pre-qualification list? Thank you.
I'll start, and then my colleagues here will probably add. Well, for pre-qualification is WHO carrying out the assessment and confirming if the assessment is positive that this site is pre-qualified, and then this doesn't have, as far as I know, any official meaning, but it helps a lot in many cases. For example, when the UN agencies give medicines to certain places and countries. The Article 58 is something in a way similar, but done by the EMA. So let's say it's a choice of the company if they want to go for the pre-qualification, if they want to go for Article 58, or both, let's say. I have to say that in Europe we tend to work with marketing authorization holders, so also we have an opinion holder also for Article 58. Normally, it's not the manufacturer. In the case of WHO, as far as I know, it's the manufacturer which is qualified, pre-qualified. I don't know if I have answered. That's the best I can do. I don't know if...
So I think it's going to be our last intervention before Agnes wraps up. But what's the added value? I think the added value for me would be that you have a full, very, very comprehensive scientific assessments of the products using what are really extremely high standards. I'm not saying WHO standards aren't high. I'm saying that it's a much more of an scientific assessment. But that scientific assessment then means that you don't, at the national level, necessarily then have to redo the scientific assessment because you have the EMA assessment that you can rely on. And this is why the WHO, it's not as if we're competing, it's either or. The WHO, the Article 58 procedure was done together with the WHO. So WHO obviously feels it has a value for them as well. They're involved from the very beginning. We can only start an Article 58 application if we agree it's eligible and the WHO agrees it's eligible. And then they pour an awful lot of resource into making it happen, as do we, and as do the partner regulators from the target countries. So the experience is that it does offer a valid outcome that is worth it for the EMA in terms of our global health responsibility. It offers value for the WHO in terms of their responsibilities, and offers value for the target regulators in terms of their responsibilities for patients in their countries.
Thank you to Riccardo and Martin for this. Just to add that pre-qualification is actually limited to certain products, and that the Article 58 or medicine for all is not. So we can imagine that we have innovative medicines coming through the Article 58, maybe more than through pre-qualification. And that is why the scientific assessment made here makes sense, because we can provide this expertise to assess this product that maybe is not available to pre-qualification, which is mostly for a small molecule focusing on generics and in some areas, and also vaccine and diagnostics and devices. But maybe it's time to conclude, because I promised that you would be able to leave. And I'm a bit embarrassed because I have to present to you the apologies from Guido Razi again. This time he's well and working. There has been an emergency and related to Brexit. He has a document to revise now, and he cannot, unfortunately, come. And I really know that he wanted to be here, so it must be an important one, really, believe me. And I can tell you, it's not a ghost director, it does exist. So it was really a great pleasure to have you. I hope we have changed a little bit your view on regulators. We are normal people. We talk, with a lot of acronyms, I have to say, it's not everybody's language, but if you worked here, you would get used to it. So we are really dedicated to public health, and this, I hope, has shown throughout the presentation yesterday and today. You've seen my colleagues, they have not been briefed on the same, but they come with exactly the same idea. We work for patients. We engage with patients. We engage with you academics. We work with you regulators outside of the EU. We want more of you NGOs to coming to us and discussing public health with us, so we can help you and facilitate at the end medicines for patient. We don't do devices. I know it may be disappointing for some of you who wanted to discuss maybe more other aspect. We don't do other things we don't do clinical trial directly, but we, as you can see, and we have had the pleasure of having an expert from Belgium, the head of agency from Germany and from the Czech Republic, and we have had the pleasure of having a CHMP member from Sweden, that all these member states work together for the science, for public health, for the patients. And this is how we have been networking. That's why we are not shying away from saying that we are proud of the success of the European network. There may be a little complication on the way, okay. Our procedure may not be that simple, or maybe a bit duplicated. If you look at all the post-authorization between the annual obligation, the reassessment, the PSUR, the et cetera, so that is maybe where we could simplify and do a better job, but that's also the message we want to send to our legislators, that next time, please think twice. But you are also an important voice for us, because you can also address some of this issue by saying it to your MEPs, to your representative, that the collaboration needs to continue. We have ways through IMI, through Horizon 2020. We want to develop that interaction. This year and the next year, as you have already seen, can be a bit difficult for us because of the relocation and all the consequences of Brexit. But we are still open to engaging with you, discussing with you, improving what we do. And I would like to thank you for having been so interactive and asking so many questions. We can continue afterwards, but for those who have a train or a plane, it's at the end. Thank you very much.